I burned out within the first 6 months of being here. And at one point, I've got a young son. I found myself in tears in the kitchen, just on the ground and not knowing what to do. When it comes to the startups, I've yet to see a company that I'm like, I've never seen anything like this before. That has been super successful. You'll get your BNPLs, you'll get your e-commerces, you'll get your marketplaces. What's new?
Today, we're joined by Christina Craver, a tech leader with over a decade of experience driving digital transformation across the US, Europe, and the Middle East. Currently an account executive at Slack, Christina has led high-impact product teams, scaled digital ecosystems, and worked with global giants like Oracle and the AFC. In this episode, we dive into Dubai's fast-paced work culture, the challenge of burnout, and why tech leadership here is unlike anywhere else. We also discuss hiring top talent, scaling startups in MENA, and why Slack has become a game changer for modern teams. If you're navigating career growth in a high-intensity market, this episode is packed with insights you won't want to miss.
What was the most surprising thing that you found in Dubai?
Personally or professionally? First question.
Oh God, let's do personally first.
The fact that everything is at your fingertips. I mean, I'd visited a number of times, and my brother has been living in the UAE since 2017. So it wasn't the first time actually coming to visit, but literally you have everything available to you. And it's a good and a bad thing. It's a blessing and a curse.
That's so true. Every time I go out of Dubai and I remember how convenient it is, then I was like, oh God, I want to go back so bad.
I think the great thing about living here, and then everybody's from somewhere else, right? Unless you're the 12% of the population that is not from somewhere else, right? But the contrast is amazing. Because when you are here, you're able to say, you know, I really would wish I had my mom's cooking, or that I could go out and, you know, walk on a boulevard in some European city if you're from a capital, let's say. But then when you go home, certain things you do miss about Dubai, and it's that contrast that makes you really appreciate what you have and where you've come from as well.
What about professionally?
Professionally, somebody told me before I moved to the region, they said, Christina, you do know that Dubai is the US times 4. And I said, yes, I understand what I'm getting myself into. It's the US times 40. Everyone is running all of the time because there's so much movement, there's so much excitement, and it requires levels of energy, but also purposeful rest in order to keep those levels going.
So I have an executive coach that's helping me in a lot of few things that I'm doing right now. And I was very surprised. One of the things that he pointed down is like, Mahmoud, I need you to know when to rest before you get burned down. I was like, what do you mean? Burn down is a myth. I'm like, no, you're going to burn down eventually. And all of those going to be on hold.
I'll tell you a funny story. So I've been here going into the 3rd year. I've changed roles 3 times. This is not normal. It's normal for the region. You see this a lot, and it happens either by choice or by circumstance. But in my first role, I burned out. I burned out within the first 6 months of being here. And at one point, I've got a young son. I found myself in tears in the kitchen, just on the ground and not knowing what to do. And also being scared, because you first get to a new place, especially if you've got a family, you've got some people that you need to be taking care of. And you don't know, is it you? Is it the environment? Am I not giving enough? So for those of us that always want to give 110%, Dubai will take 2,020% if you give it. And you also have to understand your own limits, because in Dubai, which is basically a limitless city, if you think that you have limitless reserves of energy, of time, of attention, you very quickly understand that that's not the case.
To be very honest with you, this is a very common story that I heard, and most of my new friends that come here to Dubai and then try to make it, most of them, they crash and burn in 2 years. Why do you think here in Dubai, it takes a toll on you? Is it the lack of autonomy? Is it there is so much opportunity, so much things to do?
It's a mix. I think that there's so much opportunity, there's so much excitement, there's so much buzz, and it gets you a bit on a kick, and you continue to kind of move forward, whether it's for inertia or for other reasons. I think that also everybody wants to show who they are, especially if you're new in the market. Because it's not an easy market for some. I know some people who've had amazing careers here, amazing trajectories, but others who say, I can't find a job, and I come from great companies, whether it's in the US or Europe or Singapore, wherever that is. And so there is also a bit of instability. There is instability in understanding, okay, am I going to stay in this city, in this house? I've also changed houses 3 times in 3 years. People keep buying property, right? So they buy the houses from under you. And that lack of stability makes it, you say, okay, I need to prove myself. I need to show the market who I am. I need to prove myself. Somebody once told me, they said, Dubai, more and more talent is coming. It's true. And the more talent that comes here, it's great for the ecosystem, but it brings more competition. And so the question of, okay, you honestly every day need to be keeping your spot. I played clarinet in school. And for anybody who played an instrument, at least in an orchestra, there's chairs. First chair, second chair, third chair. And sometimes you will automatically be demoted a chair. Sometimes you'll say, I'm going to battle that person because I think I'm better than them. You are constantly in this battle of chairs here in Dubai, unless you're doing your own thing, unless you're a startup founder. And then the battle of the chairs is the market rather than your colleagues.
I mean, you come from the States, and I always say that, especially Silicon Valley, is the top 1%. And I always say that Dubai is the place where the top 10% that come here as well, and it's very competitive. Do you think it's a fair assessment?
I think it is fair. Obviously, so I got into the startup space and I was interested in startups when I did my master's. I did my master's in Florence in European Union economic policy. And I did studies on startups. And I said, I had read an Economist article at the time about Silicon Valley and why it was, and this was at the beginning of the tech startup boom in Europe, right after the crisis. The crisis in Europe went on for a bit longer than it did in the US, obviously. And, they were asking, why is Silicon Valley in Silicon Valley? Why is it not in, Poland or elsewhere? And Silicon Valley, it's got a history. It's built hardware, then it moved into software. And so you have a high concentration, not only of talent, of knowledge, but also of capital. Silicon Valley, many try to replicate it. In Italy, they used to say, we are the Silicon Valley of the Alps. It's like, okay, that's a nice marketing tool, but you can't just say it. You have to be it, right? And I think I've seen a lot of Silicon Valley expertise coming to Dubai, actually, in very, very well-known organizations, whether it's Lyft or Uber or Airbnb, et cetera. You see these household names, and people are coming over here looking for roles as founders, as CTOs, as angel investors, as advisors. So a lot of that talent is coming over to Dubai. When it comes to the actual talent market here, I have a bit of a rule. I like mentoring, and I like mentoring, especially kind of younger, early stage professionals, also university students. And I think that this market is, if you're immature in your career, you want to go somewhere mature, whether that is a company or a market, so that you can get experience and gain it, okay? If you are mature, you want to go somewhere that's immature to take advantage of the arbitrage, the fact that they need my experience and my expertise. So what I tell people, especially people who are looking, maybe they grew up here in Dubai, they're at university elsewhere, and they say, should I come back to Dubai? I say, no, do not come back to Dubai. Get experience elsewhere. Go to Silicon Valley, go to San Francisco, go to the European capitals, go to London, Singapore, wherever it is, to get the experience, and the market will value you more here for that. If you have experience elsewhere, Habibi, come to Dubai. Like, Dubai is a great place for people who have got, the 10, 15 years of experience under their belt. The market really appreciates that talent and that skill.
We had this conversation before. Let's say my younger brother watched this episode. He's going to graduate next year. You don't think it's a good idea to come to Dubai first?
I think that the years of experience, even if it's just a few years before coming here, and also, again, I'll pose a question back to you. Yeah. You're going to be hiring a new product manager. Okay, junior, has 2 years of experience. Would you hire the junior product manager that had 2 years in a Dubai or UAE-based startup, or 2 years in Silicon Valley?
I would not have a junior product managers in both. And this is something that one of my guests were discussing, because especially in this region, I need someone senior.
Going back to the point, right? The junior level experience. And I think that other markets have better structure for juniors, graduate schemes and programs. That here, there are some really great local programs. Dubai Business Associates, the Falcon program. There are some that are very well structured that are able to get you into the market. But a lot of people in that age bracket that then get jobs, oh, but I'm looking at the other people and they're getting this and I don't understand why. And it's like, you haven't put in the time yet. And you're deciding to put in the time here. So this is the way that it works. So again, my advice for kind of junior entry level is get experience elsewhere and then come back.
I mean, we're going to talk about your experience in Slack, but before that, what do you think that the main difference is between all the Western markets and here the Middle East market regarding for startups wise? Why do you think startups here are different from the West?
This is not an original thought, so I'm not going to say that it's mine, but there's a lot of, well, it's worked elsewhere, why can't it work here sort of a situation. So so-called copycat startups, the models.
Guilty. Even I do it.
I mean, many. I was at Leap just this week, right, in Riyadh. Very exciting. Like we were just talking about Abu Dhabi, I think is very exciting. Riyadh, also very exciting. But I overheard some VCs in line to get shawarma. Had to get some food at some point. They were like, yeah, I was expecting more. I'm a little bit underwhelmed with the companies that I've seen here, right? And real innovation, real differentiation. Yes, there's localization. There's, but I do it in Arabic, or I do it in this very specific Arabic dialect. Absolutely. There are gaps in the market that the international companies are not kind of coming to. But I think that there's not enough innovation. It comes from doing things differently, not doing things the same just for you in where your hometown is. So I think that people need to be a bit bolder. We were just talking, though, also about people being a little bit, I would say, cautious or afraid to take risks, to fail. It's a cultural question as well. If you go to Germany, if you fail at a company and you go bankrupt, you can't start another business. That's not conducive to failure, to saying, okay, I could be destitute and then have this comeback story. Now, America's exaggerated on that aspect. I'm going to be very honest with you. This pursuit of happiness story, or The Blind Side, where you see this tragic and then you come up. America feeds off of that. And I think that we do it to an extreme, because then you look at the middle, and the middle is not like that. You've got these massive exceptions, and then you've got a lot of people who are not doing so well, and then you have people that are in the middle. So I think that it's funny. Somebody once told me, so I moved here, and we'll get into the story hopefully, but I moved here from Italy. I didn't move here from the US, and I'd been in Europe for about 10 years. And somebody said to me, they said, Arabs are very similar to Italians. Yeah, right? But the more that I've lived here, the more that I agree. And there's a lot of relationship questions. There is gaining trust with people. So this is not about being risk averse or otherwise, but I see more of a similarity to, let's say, Southern European cultures than to the US. In terms of moonshots, UAE especially, and the region have some crazy ideas and some really, really wide visions that they've been executing on. So I'm not going to say that there is total risk aversion, but when it comes to the startups, I've yet to see a company that I'm like, I've never seen anything like this before. That has been super successful. You'll get your BNPLs, you'll get your e-commerces, you'll get your marketplaces. What's new?
That's a fair criticism. And to be honest, I've launched a few startups here, and I looked on the startup models that work elsewhere, either the US or the UK. Let me change a few stuff, and they have been successful here. But I realized that I'm part of the problem. Very honest.
Admitting you have a problem is the first step to healing. Now, I think there's another thing that I think is important to think about as well. So there's many kind of US culture and characteristics that a lot of people like to hold up to the light and say this is amazing. But then when it comes to, okay, now be it, it's very difficult. Disruption. Disruption is very difficult because it's disruptive. Imagine you are in a classroom and everything is fine, but the classroom, it's not working. And then somebody comes in and just breaks everything apart. You're like, what are you doing? You're just breaking everything apart. Yes, because this is not working and I need to disrupt. So I think that disruption and being disruptive could be taken in a different way if we want to start changing paradigms.
I will need to think about this for days now. But tell me about your experience in adopting Slack here in the region, because you work in companies where they didn't have Slack and you work in companies where they had Slack, and you spotted the difference.
Yeah. So I worked in Oracle for about 5 years. And prior to having Slack, we were on strange chat tools, Pigeon. Some teams had HipChat elsewhere. And then all of a sudden one day we all got Slack. It was like everything changed. It's like, oh, this is nice. I was part of an EMEA-wide team, and before that it was lots of emails. We were on WebExes at the time, Cisco bridges, trying to connect with one another. This was 2017, right? And when we got Slack, it was just, oh, I can create emojis of my customer and, celebrate the fact that we've gone live with a massive transformational project. It's very funny. So Slack was acquired by Salesforce, and talking earlier with you about the startup stories that are just constantly repeated, Slack is one of them, right? It was actually bought after we had adopted it in Oracle, which is very funny because it's like, okay, now Oracle is powered by Salesforce, right? And I know that Larry Ellison and Mark Benioff, they have a very good relationship, even though there's, competing sort of market segments. But when Slack was acquired for $27.7 billion, right? Like every founder is just like, I wish I could exit like that, right? I wish I was living the dream. I think that there was an idea of, okay, we can make this into a product that not only people love Slack, by the way. And I love Slack, and just the amount of love. I was at GITEX this year, and people would just sporadically come to me and be like, I love Slack, or my organization doesn't have Slack anymore, and I don't know how to do things, right? But when I was working as head of product for what is now Ignite at the DIFC, so it was originally founded as the Virtual Hub. There's Innovation Hub, there's Virtual Hub. We said we need Slack because we had engineers that were based in Europe. We had our product team, we had business development, and we needed a way to be able to work together and collaborate in a way that's very quick and agile, because product has to be agile. You know this very well, right? And so I, at one point, ended up adminning Slack and having to be the Slack champion. So I'm sitting here saying, okay, I need to add new engineers. These guys just got onboarded from the other company. Okay, I've hit my virtual credit card limit because my team is growing. And usually it's a good thing. It's like property development. The more cranes you see going, the better it is, because it means there's investment. The more your Slack is growing, the better, because it means that your company is growing if you can hire more people. Ideally, right? Unless you're kind of growing in a way that's not really the best. But when we go into Slack and what I've seen here in the region, Slack has always been historically tech-based, right? So if you are an engineering team, if you're a product team, Kareem has Slack, Property Finder has Slack, you know very well. Many of the platforms that you know here run on Slack. And because they are builds, you're building technology, you're building applications, and you need that. But it's so much more than that. And I found that out after I actually stopped adminning and joined Slack, and I saw the use cases in marketing, in finance, in approvals, the way that we use Slack. I realized that we were using it 10%. There were certain features that I didn't even know were there. And I sit down now, even though I serve large enterprises across all segments, I love just sitting down and opening up Slack with somebody and being like, show me how you're using this tool, because I can tell you that you probably are not using it well. And I'm not going to sit here and give you integration points and your automations and what you need to do. Just where you're clicking around the system, you could be using a lot better. And I think that's a lot of where this idea of Slack as a chat tool comes from, because people use it like that. And now with the introduction of AI within the tool, Slack is an acronym. It's searchable log of all conversation and knowledge. We used to talk about tribal knowledge within organizations. And where does tribal knowledge live? In people's heads. And how do you get that information out of people's heads and into people's hands? The response is Slack. So you have open conversations. I remember my CEO at the time when I was adminning, he was great. He got really mad one day, common. And he said, listen, no more DMs, no more private channels, everything public. There's limits to that. You know, you have leadership channels and you have HR things you need to do private. But the more information is freely available, the more people understand what's going on in the organization, especially cross functions. And then you add AI to that and you say, you know, what happened to project X? And it gives you a summary of that. You're like, oh, okay. So if so-and-so is on holiday or so-and-so decides to leave the business, they retire, they move on, they leave the country, they've got a different opportunity, you don't lose that. That brain doesn't just escape the organization. So I think that's really where we didn't use it in the right way to begin with. And now I'm evangelizing more and more, both within Salesforce itself, Salesforce Middle East, but also the customers in the region.
So I'm launching a new startup, still stealth mode somewhere in Southeast Asia. And our investors want us to use a communication tool that adopted by a sister company, their own communication tool. 90% of the employees, they came to me, engineers, product managers, designers, can we please have Slack? Why the word of mouth is so strong? I know they're not getting money by offering Slack, but everyone is telling me, can we please have Slack instead? Why?
I have a feeling I know what you're talking about in terms of what other tool is there. It's just, how do we create these sort of slipstreams within a company rather than friction and barriers? And it's not only about the performance and some other tools I've heard. I was at lunch in the mountains of Italy one day over the summer and somebody just yelled, I hate this other tool that we're using. I'm like, we're at lunch on a Sunday and you just randomly say this, right? The reason that people love Slack is really first and foremost the design.
It works.
It's the design. So it's function, but it's also design. Now, having been around designers more often, I understand, hopefully a little bit more. My designers can tell me if I'm wrong, but a little bit more about information architecture, right? And where you're putting things and how you're getting them. And the team is constantly working to make it better and you know, less clunky or less noisy. Because a lot of people, the comment will be like, there's just too much going on Slack. I can't deal with it. But the fact that you're in channels that are dedicated, that you're working in threads, that you can respond, that you can jump on a huddle right away, it makes it seamless. It's not just, hey, let's use our messaging tool to set up a meeting in diaries, or nobody responds to me on this tool, then I send a formal email because I need to escalate it to someone. It changes the culture of an organization. And I've seen the same thing. There is a company here in the UAE, unfortunately, that switched off of Slack, and they're a big company, you'll know the name, and moved to probably the company that you're thinking about, because they were told, we'll just give it to you for free and we'll pay to get everybody over. The product and tech teams rebelled. Said, no, we don't want to use the system. I've talked to CEOs in the region that have been told they will be using other systems other than Slack. And they're like, you will never see me on that system ever. Literal boycotting, right? I've never seen that with Slack. Because again, the experience and just getting your work done, doing the work and getting it done rather than the formalities and the process of it all. Work has become so ceremonious. It's like, Are you free in these 3 slots in the next 21 days? And you say, no, come back and I can do this. And can we jump on a huddle? You write it down, you do it asynchronous, you send a voice. I send voice notes now. You know how everybody does it on WhatsApp. I do it on Slack. And the cool thing is you don't actually have to listen to it because there's transcripts on it. So if you need to get your team aligned, I would do this. And I didn't know this at the time. I had Loom. And I really like this one phrase that I had heard that, speaking is communicating and writing is thinking, which is why you in product have to do your PRDs and things because or Amazon has its 1-pager or 6-pagers because you've thought through something. Sometimes you do need to communicate to a team and a wide team. I have a lot of phrases that for me are pet peeves. One of them is, this is an expensive meeting. I hate when people say that because it's usually because they don't want to be in that meeting, right? It's like, but this meeting is important. Well, okay, how can I not have the expensive meeting? How can I not bring 30 engineers in for even a half an hour? Start to multiply and average out costs. Okay, let me record a clip. Less than 5 minutes. This is the product focus. The roadmap is behind. We need to get here by this quarter. We need to make sure that our tech debt is whatever. You get that message across, make sure that everybody's seen it, and you move on. No coordinating of calendars, no ensuring that everybody is there, head count, are there. No, everybody can work asynchronously. And I think that when it comes to hiring, we'll get into hopefully that topic as well, but you need to treat people like adults. You also need to act like an adult on the other side if you want to be treated like an adult, right? But you need to be able to say, listen, just because you're not sitting in front of me, cameras on, looking at me, okay, I'm going to put this here. I'm going to expect you to have watched it and then move on. So it's not about presenteeism or saying I showed up for that specific thing. It's about, okay, did the message come across? Good. Did it not come across? Why? Because you didn't see it? That's a bit of a problem. So yeah, getting things done faster without having to be so ceremonious.
I remember when I asked one of my teammates, why do you need Slack? Why those other tools? You can communicate, you can send messages. They're like, Mahmoud, now we're working in the office, but if we keep like this, it's really hard for us to work remote. And because we work across different teams, so across different time zones. And he told me it's really hard for collaboration to use all those tools. That's why Slack, it's needed in this company.
So the idea with Slack is that everybody has this mythical single pane of glass, right? That I can just look at one tool and be able to do everything there. And we call it the work operating system. And work operating system. So I've got my telephone, and the telephone isn't the thing in and of itself. Yes, it can make the phone call, but I can then download the apps that I need. I can do multiple things on that, all within one place. And it's enabled. I'm not sitting here every day on my phone saying what a beautiful OS I have. It just works and it's running everything that's there. Now imagine you don't have that and you have to have 6 different devices to do all of those things that you do on one. That starts to get a little bit difficult and you're almost like juggling around. And that's what happens on other apps because it's not, even though everybody says the same thing on the market. When you're in the same space, I can do that, but I can do that, but I can do that, I can do that. And when I hear that on the other side, I'll get that like, oh, why Slack? Because I can do it here, X, Y, and Z. I say, if you can do it, why aren't you doing it?
That's powerful.
Why aren't you doing it, right?
Yeah.
So you'll usually get some, well, we are kind of not really, or there's not enough time. It's because you've never tried because it's not easy. And Slack is designed for that. It's designed to make sure that everything integrates. We say we're bringing humans, data, automations and integrations, and agents together in one place.
Through my research, I was in contact a lot of people that used to report for you, your teammates, people that work with you in the past, people that are working or you're not right now, and you have a high followership. So people would love to work for you again. That's why it was very interesting when you mentioned mentoring is one of your key strength point. But what about how we go about recruiting? How do you separate the wheat from the chaff?
I'm going to be very honest. I'm not the best recruiter, not the best hire. You know why? I'm an optimist. And when you're an optimist, you try to see the best in somebody that's in front of you. So you say, oh yeah, I think they could work, or I think I can move this around. So I've had to learn through making mistakes. I've had some exceptional hires in my kind of experience as a leader. I think that I was talking to somebody about this the other day. When there are certain leaders, and hopefully you become one of those someday, but there's certain leaders that people will just always follow. Right? Doesn't matter the role, the mission, anything. It's just I have complete and utter faith in that person because of their passion, their dedication, their fairness, their mission, whatever that is, right? And you build that relationship. So if you were to tell me about rehiring, I could name you right away 5 or 10 people, and many of those would be on the list that you probably checked that I would say I would hire right away. So your experience with that person, there are many that I would say I would not hire that person again. Maybe I enjoy that person and I appreciate them and I think that they've got a lovely history or story and whatnot. So when it comes to rehiring, your experience is critical. Sometimes, and what is it? What's the word I'm looking for? I mediated a panel at DIC on hiring and women. And somebody said, we should be hiring for potential. It's very hard to say, okay, what does potential look like? But I agree. And some of the best hiring managers that I've ever seen have brought people in, myself included, that had no prior experience in the role that they've been given. And those have been exceptional. And so when you're looking for potential, what does potential mean? Potential means, for me, a willingness and curiosity to learn, energy. You bring that. Okay, I'm ready. I can go. You bring a good amount of critical thinking as well, and you bring a certain sense of humility. I've never done this before, but I will become the best at this for you because you entrusted me with this task, mission, or role. Those have been the hires that they also make you feel the best because you come out of it saying, I placed a bet and that bet panned out and it was amazing. So I hired someone in my previous role. We were looking for somebody to do data analysis and cleansing. Not the most engaging job, but it required man hours. And I interviewed a couple of candidates. Some of them I just knew within 30 seconds. And I've learned that better, actually. I don't hold on. If an interview is 30 minutes and I know in the first 5 minutes it's not going to work out, I cut it short. It's respecting my time and that other person's time. If you say, well, I interviewed some people, so why do you want to move to Dubai from, London or wherever else it is? Because I went there on holiday and I had a great time. All right, I'll see you on your next holiday. Thank you very much. Not exactly the most compelling reason to come to this market. You tell me you've done some research here. Yeah. What are you excited about, and so on. So I cut it off. But this person that I interviewed, she was ex-Amazon. She had a 1.5-year-old. And she said, is the job remote? And I spoke to my boss. He said, no. If I don't see a person, at least for the first few weeks, I'm not trusting them to be at home. And it was data cleansing. And so for the first week, at the time I had a nanny. I brought my nanny, and my nanny watched her son while she was in the office with us. And okay. I got a talking to. That was a mistake. You should not have used your own personal resource to help an individual looking for a role. If they want a role, they should sort themselves out on their own. And I got into it. I said, I don't believe in that. I think we need to support women, especially women who are talented, that want to come back to work. This person ended up being phenomenal. Was so good, even though sometimes we had to be off camera because she had the baby, she was working off hours. She got everything done to a level of precision that no one in the team could have done. And then she transitioned into a role of customer support. And she's still there and still doing a fantastic job. And my boss came back and was like, okay, you were right about her. she was fantastic. So I think, again, trusting yourself after a bit of experience, a bit of failure, and saying, I'm going to take a risk on somebody because I want to see if that bet will have some return. That's the most rewarding hiring you can do.
Thank you so much for sharing the story. It's very inspiring. So I follow you on LinkedIn and I love your videos. They're very fun, informative, and something that always caught my eye, which is your mission is to transform MENA. Why is that important for you?
So I'll do a really quick summary of my background. So I lived in the region as a kid. I moved to Riyadh and I lived there from 1998 to 2000. And I'm originally from Washington, D.C. area, from Maryland, Silver Spring, Maryland. I went to university in L.A., and then I did my master's in Italy. I did a stint at the European Parliament in Brussels, and then I moved back to Italy. And I always had in the back of my mind, I think I'd like to go back to the Middle East. At some point in my career, I'd like to go back. There was all these, and if there's something that I realized over time, if there's something in the back of your head, it becomes subconscious, and sooner or later, you're going to make it happen, right? So I found that opportunity to come over, actually coming here after a workshop that I did at Mazda Europe in Leverkusen. I decided to come out to Dubai, and an opportunity came about. But my background, as I briefly mentioned, is not in tech. I transitioned into tech, and it took me a while to admit that I was a woman in tech, since I'm not, an engineer. I don't have a computer science background, and I always felt a little bit of, a fish out of water. But technology, I think, is the great equalizer. It's what helps individuals, companies, markets start to move up and progress. And so, as I mentioned, I've transitioned a number of times while being in the market. And at one point I looked at, I said, what is the one common piece that goes through every single role I've had? And it is using technology to make things better. Improving, I think you've probably seen on my LinkedIn profile, I want everyone, myself, you, companies, the market, to reach their full potential. Because I think a lot of the time there's untapped potential within anything that is constructive, that is creative, that has some energy and some backing behind it. And so if I can take that technology to unleash or unlock that, it's like, giving $1 to get 100 back. And it's not only about, the economic power, but how can I take a university student and say, here, I'm going to give you this, I'm going to plant this seed, and, forest is going to grow. That's really rewarding to me. But I had another account executive from a tech company. She goes, you wrote a post about women in tech, and I agreed 1,000%.
Really?
That I didn't feel like I could call myself that, and so on, and representation. And I'd never heard a peep from her. She didn't even interact or comment on it. The fact that your thoughts or whatever, if you share it, even though if it doesn't get something back, there are people on the other side that appreciate it or that need that message. That's very powerful to me. And I think a lot of women, again, going back to my phrases that are pet peeves, like this imposter syndrome thing, I think it's been beat down too much. Yes, in order to grow, you need to do something you've never done before. Halas, that's it. I'm an imposter. Everyone's an imposter at some point. Because you've never been a head of product, or you've never been a CEO, or you've never been a founder, or you've never been an investor. There's always a first time for everything. Stop saying imposter syndrome. Yeah, fake it till you make it. Figure it out. One of the things that one of the people that we know in common, she will tell you, Christina, the one thing she continued to tell us as a team, just try. Just try. Don't be afraid. Don't sit here and analyze and rationalize. Just try. If you fail, it's fine. Get yourself, brush it off, and move on. You didn't completely tank a world economy. I don't know, put a feature out there that people didn't care about. Fine. At least you tried, and you didn't sit here for 6 sprints not delivering anything. So anyways.
I've been creating content for like past 2 years on YouTube only, and I still don't feel comfortable sharing on LinkedIn or Twitter. I don't know. I don't want my boss or my friends know about it. How do you feel like sharing your videos on LinkedIn so far?
So it's funny. When I was in Oracle, there's this thing called, I think, like Oracle Champions. And they would give us the prepackaged corporate message to repost. And most corporates, especially in the tech world, have this. I had a girl in a program called Gen O for new grads. She told me, my engagement goes down when I share those posts. And I just started laughing so hard because it's about being authentic and it's about being genuine and having your voice. And you can talk about personal topics. You can talk about topics that are not specific to your role. And then you can talk about company things. But if you do it in your own voice, it resonates so much more. So I'm a bit sarcastic. I haven't been super sarcastic on this time around. Maybe next time. But I'm a little bit, don't take things too seriously, including yourself. It's better to get a laugh out of somebody than an eye roll. Right? And so putting that kind of content out and the amount I have, it's so funny. I get these random, and again, I don't do content because that's what I want to do in my life. Like I work in tech companies. I want to make an impact. I want to make sure that they're using things properly. But sometimes you need a little bit of that engagement to get people excited and understanding what's going on. But I'll have some people, I get emails like, oh my God, you're famous. It's an honor to me. I'm like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? Or like get WhatsApp messages from ex-colleagues. You're like a star. I love your content. And it's literally me and my husband. Okay. And I'm like writing, this is what I want to do. And he's like, no, stand over there, move over here. And an iPhone. Honestly, it doesn't take very much, but having the idea and knowing what you want to say in a concise and interesting way takes a little bit of practice. You're always going to be bad at the beginning, probably a little bit cringe, but you get over it. And again, don't take yourself too seriously.
Christina, thank you so much for making the time and coming on the podcast. I still have hundreds of questions we didn't cover. We definitely need to do an episode too. But if there's any way where our audience can be helpful for you, where we can find you to learn more about you, how can we get Slack?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to give one rule of thumb that I have, especially for LinkedIn. So you can find me on LinkedIn, Christina Craver. I think it's Christina M. Craver is the tag. I don't usually accept people that I don't know because I want to have met you before. So coming to Slack community events, we have one coming up, coming to other events where I'm participating, introducing yourself and then connecting. If you're in a different market, if there's no way for us to meet, send me a note. Hi, Christina. I'm another woman in tech. I saw the podcast. I thought it was great. I'd love to talk to you. I'd love to just follow you. I'd love to just stay in touch. And not those generic, I'd love to add you to my network messages, but something that's like real, higher probability that I will get back to you, higher probability that I will meet you for a coffee. Right. So I would say that's the best way for now. And I always love meeting people. And it's not always easy when you're kind of in the day to day. So, looking forward to seeing what comes of our chat and new possibilities.